All right, guys, so I've started to dig in a little bit on here already. Like I mentioned, guys, this is spiraling rapidly, and now I had to come up with a plan to make sure that I am addressing everything because I don't want to have to do this a second time. Right, so we're going ahead, we've done the drawings, we've got those in there, started figuring out what those loads are going to be. Looks like if we have 80 amp power, it is, measured it all out finally, looks like we've got about a 22 to 23 foot run each way, and so we're going to go ahead and put that into the wire sizer, see what it spits out. It's probably going to be a 2 gauge or a 4 gauge wire that we're going to have to run from the house bank all the way back to here. And now we'll take a look, we spin the camera around, you're going to start to see things that we had here. Originally mounted here, we had this NEMA junction right here, and we have our trim tab pump and everything that's right here mounted up. And so we had that, and now we've also got our ActiSense, our EMU1 ActiSense. I'll go ahead and pull that up right there. That is being used to monitor the generator right here. So that's taking the analog input and converting it over to digital and to NEMA and spitting it out onto the network. We've also got our bilge pump connection right here with a spade terminal on it, and that's going down to our bilge pump. And then we've got all of our wiring right here for the existing underwater lights going across all the way over to there. So we're going to have all of that happening as well. So now we know what we're doing, and we've got a game plan, and we're figuring out what it is. Let's go ahead, let's start tearing some things down. First, I'm going to see if I have to extend this trim pump wiring harness, because there is some extra there, but I don't think it's enough to get me over the hurdle here and get this part taken care of. So we're going to dig in on that, and then we're going to start making some measurements to figure out where it can actually live back here on the transom, because I'm going to have to make a board of some kind to mount that on, and we got to make sure that board also has enough room on it to mount those Lumishore light controllers like we talked about. So let's dig in. So we've gone ahead, we've got that all spliced in from that side right there. So we got that all chopped up. We've done a nice little bus bar right here. We got all the colors all done up on it, and everything's right there. And then we've gone ahead and we've had to run the wires up over to here. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get rid of, I think it's right here, we can start to see some of these lines that were from the trim tab. We're gonna have to chop those out of there. I gotta get a catch bucket. I don't have that handy right now because there's going to be fluid in that line. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. In the meantime, I've got the other ends of the wire here, and then somewhere in this, I've got the original harness that plugs in to the other end. So we're gonna go ahead, splice these ends in right here, and get this all ready. So that way we can go ahead, after that gets all spliced up, we can pull that off, drain that out, and then I gotta measure out what's going to fit right here, and figure out what other wire runs I need to make over the deck here to feed those underwater lights and make sure I've got the appropriate size feed wire for that. So let's get going. So now we finally have the extended harness all done for the trim tabs. And talking about the trim tabs and the harness extension and doing all of this, you notice as I was going through the time lapse there, we went through and we did everything with ratcheting crimpers. This way, when we go ahead and we make the crimp on our connectors here, in this case this is a heat shrink butt connector, we're not actually puncturing this around here, so we're keeping everything sealed up on there. What we don't want to have happen is something get chipped or nicked in there. Now we're going to get moisture in there, and now we've defeated the whole reason of having a heat shrink connection on there. And you also notice I used a heat shrink, and that whether ring terminals, whether it was on the butt connectors on the other end. And while working on a boat, you can do a bunch of different things, but man, you can never go wrong with using a heat gun to do all of your shrinks. Now, this is a diesel boat, we've got a diesel generator, I don't have gas on board, so I don't have to worry about sparks igniting flames. But if you are working on a boat with gas, do not use a torch to go ahead and shrink down those heat shrink connectors. You are only asking for a problem, and the insurance company is going to come knocking on your door after you get out of the ER when you blow yourself up on the boat. So that's a little safety tip on this one here, right? So now we've got this extended. I'm gonna go ahead, I think the next step here is probably gonna be to pull this pump off, get this all drained out, and then we can go ahead and start pulling those lines back, and then we can also go ahead and run the proper wire size we're going to need for those Lumishore iOS or EOS light connectors back here that are going to control the light drivers. So what we're trying to do is just get all the wire runs done, leave everything long, leave everything nicely coiled up and long and labeled, so when we start buttoning things up and I have the boards made for things back here and for up front, everything can land. We can cut it all to size, dress it, and make it look all nice, pretty. So let's go ahead and dig in on that next. All right, as you can tell behind me, guys, we've gotten off of the boat and we are now in the shop. It's a little cold, it's a little brisk. It's a perfect time to try and tackle some of these parts of the project. Now, we talked about making a new panel for that backer there, mounting everything on it. So I've gone ahead, I've measured out what I think is going to fit in there, and then how we want to lay this all out. And on there, I've measured everything all out. So you can see here, we've got our ACR, our battery studs, our fuse panel, our NEMA, our EMU, our courtesy light controller, and our battery charger for the generator. So we've gone ahead and we got this all laid out on here. I kind of know where I want all this stuff to land. Still gonna make this all pretty and router the edges and get everything going there and make sure, even though I measured it, does it all fit? And while I was at it, because like I said, it is cold out there, we did need to relocate that trim tab pump. We're also going to have to make another panel for the transom. So we've gone ahead and cut that out, figure out what's gonna fit there. In this case, I think it's about a 10 by 20 is gonna fit in there really nice. So we've gone ahead, we've removed the trim tab pump itself. That's what we've got here. Probably go ahead and clean it up, give this thing a little love and a little service since it's, 30, 40 years old and needs a little bit of attention, I'm sure. But we've also gone ahead and we have the Lumishore underwater light controllers. Now, because we are doing 6 lights on here, guys, this can only do 4. So that means we have to allot for 2 of them, which means I've still got 2 more spaces for additional underwater lights in the future. It's kind of cool, and I'll probably end up doing that. So I want to make sure we've got future access for that. We talked about on this other panel over here, we have to have the EMU. This is where I'm getting all of my engine data, converting it over to the N2K for the generator. So we got to make sure that this can mount on there, and we've got a NEMA 4-way right back here because we're also going to have the stereo back here, and I think there's one other drop. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. So want to make sure we've got easy access for that. We want to make sure that this cable is going to reach and not have too long of a cable, keep everything clean. And then we've got our Blue Seas 12 gang fuse block right here as well. The rest of the stuff we're still waiting on, but that doesn't mean we can't get started. So let's dig in, guys. I think this is all gonna get driven by where the EMU and this N2K cable lands, and then we're gonna work backwards from there. All right, so step 1 on this one is done. We got everything kind of starting to land where we want them for the parts we have. We've left room on there for the battery charger, for the generator, for the battery terminals, for the positive and negative, and those are gonna feed over to our fuse panel here. We're gonna have that all done. I'm gonna go ahead and blow that apart and make sure we've got good access for wire runs going in there. So we're gonna go ahead and hide the wire behind it. And as I was going ahead and starting on the transom one for the trim tab and the underwater light controllers, I realized I'm gonna be near the edge for a lot of this. So if I'm gonna do that, what I should really do is round over all my edges first with the router and then land everything. So that way I don't have something overhanging. We're going all this way, we're making sure everything looks all nice and neat and clean. So let's take that extra step and make sure it's done right. So without further ado, hook up the router here, make some snowflakes and get this thing all beveled up, and then we will start in on removing that and drilling holes in there and making sure we got everything ready for the wiring on there. All right, so we've gone ahead, we've got everything measured up and done up on here. I've got my trim tab mounting bracket right there. I've gone ahead, I've got the EOS light controllers right here mounted up so we get easy access to go ahead and plug this up. Then the next step that I'm going to do here, guys, is these all have data cables and obviously power cables, and we can go ahead and leave those on here and, you know, probably zip tie this up and make this neat, and it'll probably get hidden away mostly behind there. But I really want to go another level with this. It's wintertime, I've got the time. I'm gonna go ahead and make this clean, and I'm gonna do the same thing on that other board over there. Is I'm gonna go ahead and make a slot right here so this wire can tuck behind this piece of starboard right here, because we're gonna have a standoff on there. I've gone ahead and I've made some brackets that these can get mounted to. They're allowing for a standoff between what is actually the bulkhead back there and this, so we can hide the wiring behind here nice and clean. So now I'm just gonna mark that all off, drill some holes, get the fine tool going, make some slots in here so we can go ahead and pull those through and tuck those in there. And then we're gonna do the same over here for the fuse panel. And then once we get the battery charger, we're gonna do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and start digging in on all of those steps next. Which means we gotta take this all apart. But before we go ahead and take this all apart, probably should mark everything so we know exactly where we're gonna have things land on here. So again, trying to keep the aesthetics as clean as possible at the same time. I'm gonna go ahead and measure off of here and see where these cables actually want to bend down to make sure that we're not putting unneeded stress and flex on them. And it looks like it 3 inches or thereabouts. We can go ahead and make that thing drop down in there. So go ahead, we'll start it at the 3-inch mark on there, and we'll make those cuts, or marks rather, and then we'll cut it and go from there. Go ahead, we got that mounted over there, marked off there for 3 inches. Let's go ahead and mark this side off for 3 inches as well. Again, just trying to keep everything looking all nice and pretty here. This isn't something you have to necessarily do when you're doing this. It's just one of those little steps you can do. Makes things look a little bit nicer and a little bit cleaner when you're doing it. So what I'm gonna do now is take these off of here. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect this data cable. Get that disconnected. Go ahead and grab the old impact here, and let's undo our screws here. Get those put in there and there. Show you how we're gonna kind of cheat a little bit on this wire chase setup here once we get these light controllers out of the way. All right, we've got those marked off in there. Now for our next step here, we need to mark, we've got our 3-inch marks on here. We know loosely where those things are going to land. Now we got to make sure the hole we're drilling is going to be big enough to fit our cable in. All right, so now that we have all of those parts removed from there, I like to go ahead and make sure everything is labeled on here. Just make sure we know what's going on there. I know I'm doing the project. I know I'm the one doing start to finish, but I never assume on any project I'm going to be the one. And that way, if somebody is going to come in and give me a hand, I can say, hey, put the light controllers back in place, and it kind of goes ahead and we match that all up. So now what we're going to do is, we know we've got our 3 inches, so got a makeshift straight edge here in the shop. We kind of know where we're working from here. So if I go ahead and I draw my little straight edge line right there and make sure that that gets marked all nice. I'm going to lay that one right there, and I'm going to lay this one, let's see here, right there. And now what we need to do to make sure that they look uniform on here, let's get the old tape measure back out here, and let's go ahead and make sure we land this accordingly. And again, we want to, we do have the lights here, so we can use that as a reference guide here rather than the light drivers. So go ahead and figure out where those are going to fall. We know we got the data in and data out cable on this one in particular. That's going to land right there. So if I go ahead and say that I know I need my hole to be right, let's see here, go ahead and let's make another one for data. We have to come in right there, so let's just call that right there. Now I know loosely, for this side at least, where that's going to fall. And now we also know that on this side it's probably going to be a little bit different. It says we've done these things 180 out. So go ahead, bring this guy back over to here again. Get this guy sitting in place. And we know that right there is going to be kind of the top part. And let's see, we know we have data in and data out on this one. So we need to make sure we allot for that cabling right there. So let's go ahead and make that right there. Go ahead and put those guys back down. And yep, they are off a little bit, and that is okay. So here's how we're going to cheat and do this. Instead of trying to go, I don't have a lathe rather. I don't have a milling machine or anything rather for this, but I do have a 1/2-inch drill bit, and this is starboard, and it does cut pretty easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to cut a hole in our 2 landing spots here that we know we want to go on, and then from there we can connect that with a fine tool or a jigsaw, whatever it is that you have. So we can go ahead and let's get after it right here and get this thing cut. All right, so evidently I have the world's dullest 1/2-inch drill bit, but we've gone ahead, those are all cut in, and now I can go ahead and get a clamp on this thing here, and we're gonna go ahead and Zeus this thing out real quick. So let's get after it and get those tools and see what else it is we need here. Let's see. Yeah, what the heck? Let's try the jigsaw and let's see how that works out for us here. I think it's probably just gonna be a little bit faster than the fine tool's gonna be, assuming I've got the right bit for this, or blade rather, for this. Let's give it a rip and see what happens. Failure is always an option, guys. That's why I wouldn't be called Sully's Mistake Factory without that, right? Let's make sure, yeah, the old battery's got some juice in her. Let's go ahead and see what we can get cut on this thing here and see how we can make this thing look all nice, pretty. That cut like butter. I like that. Let's see here. See if we can get that again. Clean this up a little bit here. All right, put a little sandpaper on that, and that'll round those edges out of there and make sure that's all good. But what I want to do is grab this data cable right here, make sure that's going to be able to fit through. And it is. What about the other side with a collar on it? I believe it's the same size, but again, it's easier to check now than it is later, right? And that does fit through there beautifully. So that's awesome. Now we're gonna go ahead, we'll do the other side here, and then we'll go ahead, we'll get those edges rounded off, and we'll straighten this thing up and make this thing look all pretty and nice. Then we'll get this mounted back on there, and then we'll pull those cables through, and then this thing should, in theory, be ready to mount onto the transom once those brackets are all cured and gel coated and everything, and we can go ahead and bolt this thing back up, and then once power's brought back, we'll be in good shape. So go ahead and get this one cut. See how steady my hand is at this hour of the night without caffeine. There. That one. Second time's a little bit smoother, a little bit cleaner. So, a little sandpaper. I don't have a, wish I had an awl. I'd just use an awl to clean that up, but it's all right. It's all right. Let's get some sandpaper and get after it. And so I found sandpaper, guys, but I got to thinking about it. I do have a router. So why wouldn't I just use the router and router that out and get a nice round over edge on that? And then it looks all uniform and nice. It's a theory. I don't know if it's going to work or not. But we're going to try like hell and see what happens. That makes it look a hell of a lot better. And that certainly went a hell of a lot quicker. Let's do this other side. Yeah, that worked good, except it shows that I do need to trim out just a little bit more right there to make this thing all clean. All right, clean that up a little bit more. Let's see what the hell we got. I think that worked out pretty damn well. Now what we can do is get things mounted up on there. Actually, I should probably just bevel the back side of this too while I'm at it, so that way we don't have any chafing at all. Not that there's really an issue with that on starboard, but you know, never hurts, right? You got it here, you got the tools. Let's just get after it. There we go. Now, we don't have to worry about relief on that or any rough edges. That is all good. So now, move some things around here because we're running out of flat space to work with. Let's go ahead and get things mounted up and cables pulled through there. That will be it for this board. So, we'll speed this up and we'll get after it. All right, we're gonna call it a night here. We've gone ahead, we've got both of these panels wired up at least, or cut out to be wired up. Gone ahead here on this one, you can see we've got the Blue Seas fuse panel mounted up. I've got the option to bring in the power wire here, the negative wire here. We're gonna be able to bring in our 16.2 or 14.2 loads, whatever they are, into here. Again, keeping them clean and hidden out of there. You can see the same thing we've done down here for the Lumishore. Is we've got our courtesy light module mounted right there, and we've got our cable coming out. That's gonna go to our underwater lights on the transom, and they're gonna be ready to catch that 15-meter cable that's gonna come in here to feed that data in. So we're gonna have that set up. We've got our ActiSense mounted, and that's gonna be ready to receive the engine signals, and we've already got the NEMA wire over here into our four-way, and we left a little bit of an edge on this four-way here to make it really easy on these. These are all hanging down below, and these are hanging here to make it simpler to go ahead and pull cables on and off of there. So I'm gonna get back to cleaning this mess up and call it a night, and then we're gonna hit the ground running tomorrow. We're gonna make the brackets, get those gel coated up so that we can mount these things, and then hopefully power wire is going to show up soon, and we can go ahead and get power fed over to this and get that run over to there, and then we'll move on to whatever the next project is here and go from there.